Hey everyone, welcome back to another session here at HR Summer School. I'm really excited not just to be here with you, not just to be learning alongside you, but to have the opportunity and the honor of chatting with my friend here today, Francisco. He is an expert in the area of behavioral science, behavioral economics, how we make decisions as humans. And as I'm saying that out loud, you're probably thinking, oh wow, I want to take some notes here, and you absolutely should. I'm going to be taking notes myself over here. I've got my pen ready to go because I want to learn some things as we're going through the conversation today too. Francisco, welcome, sir. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you very much, man. Wow, I'm honored and thrilled to be with you today with all the audience. Last year, I was a fan attending the conference and the HR Summer School. It was a great success. I'm so honored to be here with you.
It is my pleasure to have you here. We were chatting before we actually started recording a minute ago, and one of the things I told you a behind the scenes look for everybody listening now, one of the things that I was doing, one of the things I was thinking of as I was trying to plan out the agenda for this year is I wanted to make sure we were bringing in other perspectives on things, not just in HR, but things outside of our bubble, right, to help us be better and smarter and to do our jobs. Because we've all heard, here's your 10 tips for your 401ks or your employee leave and those kinds of things, or benefits plan. You can get that content anywhere. I really want to bring some different perspectives to the table that help us to be better and more well-rounded as we're thinking about how to perform in our jobs and our careers long-term and support our company. So what I want to talk to you about specifically, again, you're an expert in the area of kind of behavioral science, a little bit about some of the big picture things, and just get us, no, I'm sorry, I skipped over even asking you to introduce yourself. So let's take a minute. I got all excited. I do this every time I'm in a meeting. I dive into the fun stuff. Take a minute, Francisco. Tell us about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. I'm the co-founder of Behave4. Behave4 is a behavioral economics company. Currently we are doing consulting in behavioral economics applied to HR in the HR space. We help organizations to shape people's behaviors to deliver better results. And the end, bringing a different perspective to HR, because I think we need to look at different numbers. I'm going to explain further afterward. Yeah, I'm the co-founder, and I'm so happy to help organizations to understand better their people, right?
Why in the world, when you were a child, you said, when I grow up, I want to understand human behavior? Probably not. Like, what
not at all.
Not
at all. Yeah, it's a good question. When I was a child, I wanted to be a basketball professional because I was a huge fan of Michael Jordan. Of course, I have to say it is about the journey. It's about the journey. I came into sales in the pharmaceutical industry, and I wanted to deliver a better service. I wanted to understand better my clients. And then I started to, I need to acquire more knowledge about how people behave and the way they do, to be able to understand them better, and as a consequence to be more effective, to be more efficient, and to be more successful in the people side. And I started to study about brain, how our brain works, about emotions. I was reading Antonio Damasio, probably one of the famous neuroscientists in the world. It was a journey, right? And then it leads me to be here today, founding this company, doing this amazing job, and I'm learning every day about human behavior.
Even those of us that study it, often we get some lessons firsthand in different experiences and things like that. So thank you for that, because I wanted to help set the stage for the audience to understand your background, that you bring to the table, the expertise, because HR, I often say this, is about, for better or for worse, it's about modifying behaviors. It's about getting people to do things they sometimes don't want to do. It's about finding ways to bring together different viewpoints, different perspectives to find a common ground and things like that. And so when I think about those kinds of things, the person that's best suited, most of us that have traditional HR training never got anything around how behavior fit into that equation. We never got anything about how people make choices and make decisions. And so what are some of those kind of common things that someone that is your background, that understands behavioral science, understands behavioral economics, what are some of the things that are fundamental? This is why we do these things, and those principles that might be applicable over to someone who works in HR, talent, learning, those kind of functions that we're talking to here today.
Yeah, first of all, I want to encourage everybody to read or study about behavioral science. I think it's really important, because human resources typically is about people, is about humans. Behavioral science still studies human behavior. You can see the dots connecting both worlds of this space. And that is one of the reasons that I'm here running this company and applying this to HR. Said that, I think we need to understand that probably many HR pros are going to agree with me as the context affects us, the way we behave. We need to understand that when the context changes, people's behaviors change too. And that is the first, right? And the second is probably is one size doesn't fit all at all. Because you imagine, Ben, you in a particular organization can behave in a particular way, and then you move to another job, another position, another organization, and the culture is different. And you are going to behave differently. It doesn't mean that you are not you. Obviously, you have this intrinsic behavior that in particular is what we measure. But then when you are in a different environment, in a different context, working with different teammates, you're going to behave differently.
Both of those will be related in some ways, right? Because I'm thinking about the first one you mentioned is context. I can think about different times, even when I'm at work, if I'm around a certain group of people, I'm going to talk differently than when I'm around my boss or other members of the senior leadership team. I'll talk differently, I'll act differently, so we respond in those sort of situations. I want to go back to one of the things you talked about, though, a little bit ago, because the healthcare crisis you mentioned in the last year has been on the forefront for every HR leader, whether your people are working virtually, remote, or they're working in the office, doesn't matter, regardless, that still is the conversation you're having. And that fear, probably, I don't know if that's the only emotion wrapped into that, but there are multiple emotions, caution and concern and everything else wrapped into that. And those affect how we're making decisions. And I want to hear from you, because as companies are talking now about, okay, how do we come back? How do we return to the office? That's probably part of that bigger conversation. And people who are the employees, they're going to have all those things swirling around as they're thinking about, what does this next phase mean for me? So if I'm an HR leader, how do I address that? How do I mitigate that risk? How do I try to hit that before it becomes a problem?
I think you point out that question that is so trending just right now. And we are seeing many research trying to figure out what's going on, what is coming next with this situation. I think if you listen to the top pros in this space, I think we are going to see more hybrid workplaces instead of fully remote, because we need to balance this, because there are people that probably are going to be more comfortable working from home and others more comfortable working in the office because they can't work at home because they have family there or wherever. But we need to understand this better. My advice is we need to measure. We need to measure. If you don't measure, you are not going to find responses. And the way that we can measure we need to gather behavioral data. The problem is not control. It's not micromanagement. It's not productivity. Probably the issue here is that we are looking at the wrong numbers. Understand what I'm saying? You should look your numbers. You should look your performance. You should look at your productivity or KPIs or whatever. That's right. But you need to incorporate a different pool data set, behavioral data, because behavioral data is about your people's behaviors. And that is critical just right now to understand what is behind it, what's going on with your team dynamics in a digital environment, a fully remote environment, or in a hybrid, right? Because obviously when you are changing the context, like what we are talking, imagine that if you are risk averse, it's gonna be different than if you are not. If you are loss averse, if you are long run oriented or impatient, if you are impatient, you need to know what's going on now, not in a month, not in 6 months. You need to figure out what is going to happen with your schedule, if you have to back to the office or not. Uncertainty is going to be dangerous here. And we need to work really hard in improving our communication with our teams, with our staff. But first of all, we need to embrace this experimental mindset. Even if you are in HR, that is not wrong.
That experimental mindset thing has come up in a lot of conversations recently. And I want, if you don't mind, I'd like to talk about that a little more. because when I'm fascinated by the idea of experimenting on people as a way to find out what works best for them, right? Not a, like what one of the first people I ever followed, for example, when I got into HR all those years ago, very influential on my early thinking about the space, because I had all of the traditional kind of stuff in college that said, these are the things that matter. And it was all about, here's the laws, here's the legal stuff, here's everything else. But his focus was the people matter more than everything else. Yes, you've got to take care of that stuff. That's the minimum stakes. That's not how you want to be. That shouldn't be the top, the paragon of what you're trying to do from an employer perspective. And one of his key kind of tenets was we should be treating people like guinea pigs, be experimenting on something all the time, trying to find out what works best. How can we take care of them better? What things are they wanting that we can offer? And so talk about a company or even an HR professional, leader's willingness to experiment, because you mentioned, risk aversion a minute ago. Many people that get into HR probably are pretty risk averse because it's the job to keep the company out of trouble. And yet I have seen time and time again that some of the best people in our field are those that very much have an orientation towards people, but also have a low orientation towards rules, because the rules get in the way of our ability to take care of people.
Yeah, I think probably everybody knows now that the HR role is different, has changed. It's not anymore the administrative stuff or legal stuff or whatever. We should do it, of course, but it's the time to be people first again, to look at our people and then make the changes that we need to change to survive this huge crisis that is going to come in terms of financial crisis, right? Because obviously we are not envision the consequences now, but it's going to come for sure in the future, because the world is in crisis in general. And secondly, doing experiments in my organization as an HR is not expensive. It's not difficult, right? But we need to embrace this mindset of, okay, if I want to, I'm going to give you an example. If I want to foster cooperation because it's critical now, corporate more than ever, you need to know that you are going to have in your organization conditional cooperators that only cooperates if others cooperate. That is pretty cool to know. And unconditional cooperators. They are going to cooperate always, without doubt. But they can become burnout if you don't take care of them. How to know that? You need to measure. You need to measure people's behavior first, and then once you have this landscape about cooperation or even trust is more critical, even trust, then you have this landscape, you can act, you can set integration, you can change your environment, you can act, you can adapt quickly. That is not expensive. You only need to have this or embrace this scientific mindset about experimentation. And thankfully, there are many people like you, Ben, helping HR pros to embrace this approach, because we tend to think that, oh, this is highbrow or so difficult, or I can't because I'm not a scientist. You don't have to be a scientist. You only have to be surrounded with the right people and help you embrace this thing. Because once you go to the C-suite and say, hey, this is the landscape, this is the behavioral data, we need to do this and this if we want to improve our organization further, right? You have data.